to the tune of a Spanish guitar. I wonder, da 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 da. I wonder who's kissing her now.
My name is Neil Batts. I go by Neil, but my full name is Cornelius. My father's name is John Joseph Batts.
If he was standing here right now, what would you tell him?
I would tell him I'm sorry I didn't understand what he had gone through and why he was who he was. My dad married and had 4 children, and then their mom passed away, and my dad remarried, married my mom, and they had me. And since all of my siblings were so much older than me, they were all gone from the house. I think you could probably make a strong case for saying I grew up like an only child, and I kind of had to entertain myself as a kid, and so I would listen to music, I would dabble in photography. My dad was a photographer in World War II. After the war, he collected cameras, and he had a lot of Leicas. He had a couple of Rolleis. He had a big view camera. So I, as a kid growing up, I always had that at the ready to do, and I would take pictures and stuff like that. I would borrow his cameras, steal film from him. Then, when my wife and I got married and we had you guys, I suddenly realized, oh, I really want to take a lot of pictures. That was kind of a big change for me in terms of photography. It became meaningful. It became something that I really loved the results of. And that's kind of how photography was in my blood, in my history, in my upbringing, and then now it's something I really love to do. The relationship between my parents was interesting. I mean, it comes from my perspective, which was a little kid at the time. And my mom was always very like, oh, your dad is such a great guy. He's a man of character. And by that she meant like he wouldn't swear. He was a man of his word. The timeline for my dad was, he was born in 1919. His parents were both off the boat from Ireland. I believe he was raised in Cambridge and grew up there. He had no other siblings. He grew up, went into the seminaries to become a priest, and then World War II broke out. He joined the Marines to fight in the war, and saw a few battles. He left the Marines at the end of the war, came back home to Boston. He's tried to open a camera shop or photography studio called Batts Studio. My photography studio is called Batts Studio, and it's because my dad's studio is called Batts Studio. He got married, I'm not sure around when, but probably 1947 or so. Yeah, and then his wife passed away in 1962 or 61. His dad passed away. That must have been a rough time for him. And so he quickly remarried, married my mom. They had me in 1964. And then in 1968, he had a lung removed because of cancer. He survived that. The rest is kind of non-eventful. He passed away in 1992. He had congestive heart failure. That's kind of sums up a lot of where my dad was coming from as a dad for me. You know, he'd gone through so much, he was kind of just like, I'm done raising kids. And, you know, my mom was pretty much left to raising me. You know, she would get me involved in Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts and swimming lessons and all that stuff. So, you know, I get it. I understand where he's coming from, but I think I had a little bit of conflict with my dad in terms of like, how come you're not outside throwing the ball around with me? Or that was not him. For the war, my dad never really talked much about it. In fact, I can't ever remember him really talking about it at all. I believe he was in the Battle of Bougainville. He was in Guadalcanal, Iwo Jima. So my dad joined the Marines and trained as a Marine to operate cameras. So he learned how to use this fairly big camera that he would be in a plane and he'd fly over a Japanese island and photograph it from above, or he'd go out in a raft or a small boat and photograph the shoreline of the Japanese island, and then they would use those images to plan the attack for the battle. And then he had to strap on a rifle and go in and fight like all the other guys. I never saw how the war affected my dad. But then again, maybe I did. He never talked about it. I think it happened, he put it behind him and never discussed it. And yet, he was a person of a generation. And as I've said, he was pretty hands-off with me, but he also, you know, he had, for the most part, only one lung. So he couldn't engage in sports or other activities with me. But I think a part of that was also, he felt like he had already done his work. You know, he had earned his due. And being a veteran, he was probably just kind of like, yeah, no, this is me time now. But I do remember my dad being, he would think of me in ways that I thought were, at least I enjoyed them. Like he would go out on a Saturday and go to a bookstore, and he'd come home with some sort of cool book for me. And he had eclectic tastes, and he tended to pick things that were kind of really interesting. I don't think, every time he'd come home with something, I'd be like, oh, that's really cool, thank you. And then every once in a while, it would be like, he and I would gang up on my mom, and like, she would not like it. It would be like, he would say, oh, I'm going to get another TV. And I'm like, oh, and don't forget, we have to get a pool table too. Yes, we're going to get a pool table. Where are we going to put it? Let's put it on Mom's side of the bed. And that was kind of the fun stuff that we would banter about. I do remember one time when the kitchen sink, you have the faucet and you have the hose sprayer thing, and I tied a rubber band around it so that whoever turned on the faucet, it would just spray at them. And I thought it was going to get my mom, but apparently it got my dad. And I was down in the cellar with my buddies. He, called down from the top of the stairs and said, Neil! And I went up the stairs and I looked around the corner, and he's there, and he was soaked, but he had the hose and he just sprayed me with it. So that was pretty funny. If he was standing here, I would say, I'm sorry, I didn't understand. I now understand why you were who you were, and I don't hold it against you. But I probably was kind of snotty to you on a number of occasions because I just didn't understand. Oh. Ooh. You're the best.
You're the best.
No, you're the
You're
best.
the best.
You're the best.
Tune of a Spanish guitar. I wonder, da 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 da. I wonder who's kissing her now.